Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News. It is Friday, January 30th, 4 o'clock. And yet another State of the Union, run by Democrats, of course, has decided to continue to break with the federal government. And hilarity will not follow, obviously. This is the state of New Jersey, the Garden State. New Jersey Governor Mickey Shemikey, who gives a shit, Sherrill, has crossed that line, surprisingly, and she does it in a way that puts not only federal officers, but state and local police squarely in legal danger. We're going to break down why this matters legally, constitutionally, and practically. It seems that it's all we talk about when we're not talking about something similar, and why the people who will pay the highest price for this experiment are not the politicians, but probably they're going to be rank and file police officers. So, what is the governor doing? We can strip away that rhetoric and talk about the substance of it. The governor of New Jersey has announced a state coordinated effort to prevent ICE operations from using state property. It's okay, she can do that. Create a public portal for uploading videos of federal agents, encouraging the citizens to alert others when ICE agents are spotted, and she's going to demand documentation and disclosures from federal agencies. She wants to put together a database, but this isn't for educational, it's for monitoring, it's for tracking, and she's hoping to expose every ICE agent that operates in the state of New Jersey. And legally, that distinction is going to be everything with this. And a lot of people, like I said, they talk to us all the time. Well, the criminal case is that, this, and that, and the other thing. It's not always the way that you think that you can go on these, that you should be going on these. And this has to do with the whole sanctuary city, sanctuary state deal as well. So supporters are going to say states can refuse to cooperate. And up to a point, that is true. They do not have to go out of their way. They don't have to go out and give over, the troops, so to speak, to these people. But, you know, the courts have allowed non-cooperation, which I think is probably illegal, but they still have been doing it. They have not allowed interference. Okay, so the Supreme Court says, well, the non-cooperation thing, that's one thing, but you cannot interfere with federal investigations. There is a bright constitutional line here for all of you that have friends that are yelling First Amendment while they break up cars in the middle of the streets. You can decline to help federal agents. You cannot organize efforts to impede them, which is what the database and all this stuff is going to do. Once a state starts collecting intelligence on federal officers, which is what it is, you are now putting together an intelligence unit to spy on the feds, encourage public reporting of their movements, and facilitating real time alerts like on your cell phone. You are no longer neutral. The state of New Jersey is going to become an operational actor, and courts have been crystal clear. States do not get to operationally obstruct the federal law enforcement. That violates what's called the Supremacy Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Full stop. Didn't need to go to Harvard or Yale to be able to tell you that. Here's the irony that no one seems willing to say out loud. This project that is New Jersey's, is actually the governor herself came up with this, probably with Cory Booker and a few others. This project is being framed as a civil rights initiative, but it risks violating the civil rights of the federal agents. And this is the angle that we have been pushing, is that everything that is being done against the ICE agents themselves is actually very close to violating their civil rights. We can go into that later if you can't understand why, when you make laws that expressly forbid or expressly inhibit or discriminate against anybody by the race, religion, or occupation. Okay? Federal agents have a constitutional right to carry out lawful duties without state orchestrated harassment, without being targeted for exposure, without government endorsed surveillance. New Jersey's broke all the time. Where's it getting all this money for the spying, right? When a state singles out federal officers for monitoring and public reporting, that is not transparency. It's called targeting in the business. And federal courts take a very dim view of it. And now here's the part every local and state police officer should hear me very carefully. If you participate in this program, because I know the New Jersey State Police, if you participate in this spy program against the feds, if you upload videos, if you relay locations or assist in monitoring federal agents or pull some bullshit DOT stop on them just because you are not protected by following orders. That defense does not work in civil rights cases, okay, which is what you will ultimately be sued under, which means you yourself will be sued. And then, if they can prove it correctly, you will also be brought into a criminal case, a civil rights violation. So you got both going for you. Qualified immunity is weak when federal authority is clearly established, and it has been established. And state indemnification is discretionary, which means the governor may get off on it. But those of you who decide to aid and assist the governor that are law enforcement, and even those that aren't law enforcement, I'm just saying because, there's always that guy, right? So, meaning it can vanish the moment litigation starts. If a lawsuit is filed, it will not be the governor sitting for depositions, it will be you guys. So, meanwhile, here's the silver lining: officers who refuse to participate in potentially unlawful directives, which are these, pretty much, are protected by whistleblower and retaliation laws. So, legally speaking, you would be safer to refuse to do the job than to do the job. Now, of course, you can go talk to your lawyers. I would suggest you bring this up at your next FOP or PBA meeting because this is going to affect a lot of people. That's just how it's going to be. If she wants to get that done, that's how it is. If she wants to make sure you give every federal cop a speeding ticket for going 2 miles over the speed limit so that she can pull their driver's licenses, you better figure out what you want to do here. This isn't Newark and it's not the 70s. Okay? So, how this is going to escalate, and it's going to show you how these situations usually end. You're going to get surveillance is going to create tension. Tension is going to create crowds. Crowds are going to create confrontation. And if a confrontation turns violent, if a federal officer or civilian is hurt, investigators will not stop with the person who pulled the trigger. And this is what you're going to see in this petty case, because I know petty case, because we've been talking about it for a while, that if you think this is going to end up with them hanging those federal agents when there are organized groups that have millions of dollars in their pockets that put that idiot and everybody else onto that street, you're out of your mind. Okay? So, once again, if a confrontation turns violent, if a federal officer or civilian is hurt, investigators will not stop with the person who pulled the trigger. They will trace who created that system, who facilitated those alerts, who encouraged the monitoring. That chain now leads directly to the governor's office. And this is how symbolic resistance becomes something far more dangerous. Is she already receiving reports from opposition/terrorist organizations like ICE Watch? Probably is. And it would be good if somebody were to slap her with a lawsuit right now and in discovery find out that she's actually been pushed towards this by a number of NGOs because she hasn't done enough for La Causa. You've got Spartacus in that state. He needs to keep himself in a job. And his idea is before they gentrify the rest of North Jersey, we'll set it on fire. It's how these people are, right? So the governors are free to criticize federal policy. They are free to sue. They are free to campaign. What they are not free to do is convert state power into an operational weapon against federal law enforcement. This project is not bold leadership. This is not states' rights versus federal rights. And we've been remiss in not doing something on that. They tell these morons, because they're morons, all right? The smart ones in this terrorist operation are nowhere near the front lines. It's no different than Hamas or Hezbollah or anybody else. The really smart guy is, as they say, watching this on television back in his suite. All you dummies in the streets that think you're doing something because you don't understand what the fucking political process is in the United States, that's not my problem. What is my problem is when I can't go to my old city because you burned it halfway down and it hasn't been the same since. So, as we're saying, this kind of a project will, not if, will expose the officers and most everybody else involved in it to lawsuits. It undermines the constitutional order and risks consequences that no press conference can undo. And hopefully, the governor of New Jersey will put her foot directly in this and be so. You would wish to say that she would be so embarrassed that she would quit her job, but that doesn't happen anymore. I'll tell you what, New Jersey deserves leadership that understands the difference between protest and provocation, and that does not treat law enforcement officers as expendable political shields or as a goon squad to use whenever they need it and then dump them on the side of the road. For many, many years, that's pretty much the options that you've had in PD in New Jersey. Because when this collapses under legal scrutiny, which it will, even Pam Bondi can get this done. That ought to scare you, even her. The police, sorry, the people left holding the bag won't be the politicians. It'll be the law enforcement guys. It'll be that guy from HR that came over and set up the computer program. It'll be whatever dickhead put the app together. All of you are now involved in a big civil rights lawsuit. And as you know, that's what hung everybody during all the old cop shootings when Joe Biden and Barack Obama were around. That's how you get those years. That's how you get 15 years for something. In a freaking nightmare operation someplace. And there will be the men and women who were told to just follow the directive, and it will be increasingly, increasingly wrong. So that's all we have on that. And like I said, now we've been talking about, we really need to get back to why they lie to you about the state and federal government's roles and things. But the people that are protesting, they know the difference. They don't know right and wrong, but they've already been told in their minds, if you saw, in a lot of cases, when you hear them talk, federal agents equal white patriarchy somehow, which is funny because half the ICE agents are some kind of Spanish speaking country, right? Because how else are you going to know tell these people something? You can't go out there and be like, Joe Abla, Aspinall, because the lawyers will laugh it out of a courtroom. All right. But enough of that. It's Friday. Let's try to enjoy ourselves until the next round of assholery shows up. So otherwise, have a good day, and I will talk to you all later on. Goodbye.